Good Monday to you. On today's Kelly and Company, when is it time to focus on your colon health? Nutritionist Julia Karantjas says it's never a waste of time. Get it? Yeah, see what we did there? In modern cities, can you make sense of the street corners and crossings as a low vision and blind person by just simply listening? Or is GPS and other mapping tools absolutely necessary for accessible travel? We talk about the safety of it all with orientation and mobility specialist Mark Rankin shortly. It's time to cross into another great show. You know what I mean? This one right here.
This is Kelly and Company.
Nazreen Abdul-Majid, good Monday to you. Starting the week well so far?
Happy Monday. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with that bright blue button-up shirt that you're wearing, Kelly, it really brightens the Monday.
Thank you. That's good. I hope so. I hope it makes people smile and
glowing.
Say, all right, look at that. You know, that covers up. It's the stuff between the hat and the shirt we worry about, you know. Yeah, it's great so far. Wonderful. I have to tee up. The gang over on the Pulse have invited me to sit with Alex and talk a little bit about mobility. Interesting. We're going to do that a little later on in our show today. And hi to everybody out there on who's joined us via YouTube. Remember to go over and subscribe if you would. We'd love you to enjoy some of the great content out there that we've posted. Some different things that will be posted through the week and into next week as usual. Great place to enjoy our content on the program. So last night, got to hear a bit of snow. Which, of course, Nazreen, you thought was done with.
I thought we were over
like done.
it.
Spring's here. What's going on?
Yeah. All I see people is just wearing T-shirts, and I love seeing that. But when I hear there's snow, no, I'm not doing it. I'm staying inside until it's officially spring. I mean, we started spring. I thought we were done.
So geese are all back, starting to come back, right? Hanging around. Do you have a favorite spring bird? You know, something either you like to hear that you know what it is and stuff like that. I don't really. I mean, the geese show up. I always love hearing those guys, and they're just like security guards around the building. Anything particular that you kind of like?
They're very rare, but like I love the bluebirds. It's very rare that you hear them.
Yeah.
But you know, when you're at the beach or something like that, you'll see them there more.
Are you
the sound of them? They're so peaceful, so calm.
Are you better with bird sounds now? We have so many resources to kind of go and hear what different birds sound like.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are.
I don't think so.
I'm
not as much as I think I was better before, or at least it was nobody to tell me I was wrong. You know, I'd say all sorts of stuff, and my father would, okay, that's a blue jay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure that's a blue jay, Dad.
Yeah, I can see you being a bird nerd.
I would love to know all of the sounds, and I would have loved recordings, being able to keep track of them and learn them. I know someone else that's probably pretty darn good at keeping track, or has it at times in her life, our veterinarian, Danielle Jongkind, joining us. Would you say you're pretty good at just sitting there and naming this, a bird, knowing that's a blue jay or that's whatever?
Yeah, actually, we have a conservation area out behind our house. So I often hear a lot of birds in there. I hear crows and chickadees are here all year long. Jays, I see blue jays a lot. And all of those are pretty distinctive. And this week I saw my first robin. And the grackles are back. They're really, really dark black, almost blue, smaller birds. They kind of look like miniature crows, but they're not crows at all. So yeah, I would say I know quite a few, but the sound of them, a lot of times I'll hear them and just think, wow, that sounds nice, without really knowing what bird I'm listening to.
Okay, but I have to point out the sound of crows really creep me out.
Why?
Really?
Anybody else?
Too much Edgar Allan Poe?
It just reminds me of, those creepy movies, and they all start with fog and crows around.
They have a bad rep, though.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I
they have
love
a really
crows.
bad rep.
And I'm a scaredy cat,
crows.
so...
No, I gotta disagree with you there, Nazreen. I love crows.
Really?
They're like, Well, because they're so smart, and they're so mischievous. Like, they're like the tricksters
Yeah.
of the bird kingdom. I got to appreciate that about them.
That's how come they get in movies, Nisreen.
Yeah.
They're smart.
They're being smart. Yeah. Makes sense.
I love it. It's interesting, though, because we do make those poor guys, they're always the creepy bird, and they come out at any time. Like Danielle said, they're year-round, but, here they are out in the fog. They're so smart. They're like,
Now
I'm
they
not
have a
going
bad
out
rep.
there. There's no, yeah, they have that bad rep. That's what it is. Folks, you can email us with your comments, whether it's on crows or anything you'd like to let us know at the show, at kellyco@ami.ca. You can always leave us a phone message too at 1-866-509-4545.
While winter and spring weather may go back and forth a bit, our thoughts are still always turning towards the warmth of summer and being outdoors more. Dr. Danielle Jongkind is here to give us some tips and tricks for getting ourselves and our pets ready for the summer. Happy Monday, Danielle.
Oh, thank you. Happy Monday to you too.
So, what sorts of things might we be thinking ahead about when we go into another summer season with pets?
Well, I don't know about anyone else, but I kind of always feel like I'm coming out of hibernation in the spring. I mean, the only people I see out walking in my neighborhood in the winter are people with dogs. And of course, the kids who are going back and forth from school. So I kind of always feel like spring is like, okay, let's get out of the cave,
Yeah.
clean everything up and kind of get ready for summer. And, it's really sort of a good time to look at your pet equipment, to see if anything needs repairing or replacing, and to think about your pet's health needs. And of course, to plan ahead for like any vacations or anything that you want to take, in the coming warmer months.
Mm. Are there any pet equipment that we should look for?
Well, I always think like after a long winter of trudging through the snow, a lot of dogs and their people are going to be, a lot happier about walking in the nicer weather. And, when I see dogs walking up and down the street, there's a lot of them that, they grab their leash and they chew on them while they're walking.
Mm-hmm.
They look like they're walking their people. So spring is it's a good time really to check equipment like your dog's collar, if they wear a halter, a leash, or a harness, just to make sure that it isn't going to break. A lot of times we're like, oh, the strap's an inch long, they've only chewed through half of it. Well, you don't want to test that if there's going to be a
Mm-mm.
hit by car incident or anything. So, repairing or replacing those things if it's needed. And, while you're doing that, you might also check their indoor equipment, like their food and water bowls, toys, crates, litter pans, the litter pan scoopers. I know I was looking at mine the other day going, oh, I really need a new one. This one's ready to break. Cat crates too. That's something that I see a lot of at the vet clinic that are frequently broken, when they come in. And you really don't want to put a cat in a broken crate. I've actually seen crates fall apart in the parking lot as people were carrying their cats into the clinic and actually, seen cats escape.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
So you really want to make sure you're, taking the opportunity to check all that kind of stuff and say, if this isn't good, if this isn't in good shape, maybe we should think about replacing it or repairing it.
Yeah. Does that usually happen, Danielle, because people kind of, oh gosh, I need to replace this. This isn't the great. I'll do that next time I'm out and that kind of thing. And it just doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden there's a circumstance. I need to take the cat to the vet. Obviously, no one's doing that kind of thing with any negligence or intention to be, who cares, or this will do. It have to. I mean, you get to where it'll have to do to make this trip, but I've got to do something about this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that's kind of similar, right? Like, I mean, it's not an item you use very often. I mean,
Yeah.
most cats don't go to the vet or go in the car very much at all. So, you don't think about it. Then suddenly you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. So just putting it out there as a reminder, if you're thinking about spring cleaning and doing all that kind of stuff, and you're thinking about going through your pet stuff, now's a good time to sort of assess all that and go, maybe this is the time we invest in a new one, or maybe I can get that screw and washer out of the garage and fix that up, whatever you need to do.
All right, hold on. Okay, yeah, I'm just checking here our date because it's around that time as we talk about health needs for the summer, to bring up our Danielle's favorite friends that we talk about, the ticks and so on. But what other health needs do you want to cover today?
Well, there's a few things you might think about for the warmer weather, and of course, the first is parasite prevention, not just ticks, but other stuff as well. Hopefully you've had pets that go outdoors on parasite prevention all year round, but if not, you might want to think about tick prevention starting yesterday. Because once the temperature gets above freezing, those ticks are waking
Yes.
up and they're out looking for blood, right? So,
Yeah. And that's something a lot of us didn't realize. Like until of late, I mean,
Yeah.
you've talked about it here, but I know even on regular broadcasters now, outside of us bringing you on, where we get the lowdown, I didn't realize how close to the freezing point before those guys start knocking at the door. And all right, and it's like +1. Here we go.
Yeah, well, and the recommendations have changed in the last couple of years. We were always told 4 degrees Celsius, and now they're recommending more like 0, right?
Wow.
So, like that's just a thing that they've updated. And I saw one study where they said that ticks that are infected with the Lyme bacteria have a selective advantage for survival. And I thought, great,
Of
that's
course
all we
they
need.
do.
Of
Oh,
course they do.
yeah,
So
then
I
they
was
can go
like,
to
"Oh."
-1 and still be hanging around full. I just came out of the snow.
Yeah. So,
Oh boy.
that's, stuff to kind of think about that, these ticks are, adapting and changing and, taking advantage of, a lot of situations. So, we really want to make sure that we're not giving them blood meals unnecessarily, right?
And
Um,
yeah, that's honestly so scary. It
Yes.
scares me, even though I don't have a pet, but that's terrifying to think about. But how can people really plan ahead for that sort of thing?
Well, like I say, keeping your pet on tick prevention, particularly when, we have a mild winter all year round,
Hmm.
and then, all year round is probably the best option at this point because you don't know if there's going to be days in a month where, it's going to warm up and, and all that kind of stuff. So, a lot of people, they like to put their dogs on tick prevention through the heartworm season, which is from June to November, and that's great. But you have to realize that the main season for ticks is a lot longer than that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And believe it or not, but Ontario Public Health actually publishes a map of established risk areas for Lyme disease in Ontario. And, when you go on that website and you compare the maps from years past to the maps that are coming up, and it's quite shocking to see the yellow stain of the areas at risk spreading. Like right now it's all along the Golden Horseshoe, the GTA, along the St. Lawrence River, and, sporadic areas all over the rest of the province are marked as risk areas. So the majority of us live in those areas. So, presumably there's a lot of pets in those areas too.
And I think, Danielle, am I wrong at assuming when we get our little warm-ups like we've had lately, you can't even just say, hey, man, it was 3 or 4 days. It's going to be above freezing. I don't have to worry about it because of the nature of the way things have been the last winters here, where we have in December a couple of above or a few days or more above freezing. In January, a few more. Those little guys can come out and start to do their work and then go back and hide. Or is that
Well,
really it?
and that's the concern, right? Is that, there's no guarantees that they're just going to stay under the leaf litter and hang out. I mean, if they get a chance to get out and feed, why wouldn't they take it, right? They're starving to death all winter
That's
long.
right.
So,
Sending
you
Kelly to
know,
a buffet. Let's go. Sure. Oh, it's a little cold out. That's okay.
it's the Mandarin
Yeah.
for ticks, right?
Exactly. Ticks. Oh, I'm sure they'd love us associating their franchise with ticks. But is there other, as we talk about other, I mean, that's the closest one to us, whether you have a pet or not, that ticks seem to be now the concern for us, the buzzword, because you could leave them, one could be sitting on someone's couch because their dog was just on it and you're over for a visit. It's almost the closest thing, isn't it, that we as humans really tie into the concern.
For sure. And I mean, fleas are another one.
Right.
Nobody wants to get bitten by fleas. They do bite people, though they don't live and reproduce off people like they do on pets, but at least not the pet fleas. I don't know about human fleas. Hopefully, I've never heard of
Yeah.
anyone having human fleas, though I know it's a thing. And there are other parasites too, intestinal parasites and that kind of stuff. So, it's not just about, that it's about assessing, based on your pet's lifestyle, what risks
Mm.
they're at risk of picking up and dealing with that. So that's important, and it's important for your pet's health, but it's also important for people's health too, right? We don't want them to be spreading things to immunocompromised people or, young children or anything like that.
Mm. Okay, so I recently traveled, and I saw a few people traveling with their pets, like dogs, and I saw somebody with a cat. Let's talk about traveling and how people with pets can have an easy journey. Because I look at these people with their pets and they're traveling with them, and it looks super hard. It looks
Yeah.
it looks like a lot of work.
Yeah, and and for sure, aside from all the health stuff like the parasite prevention, making sure that your pets are up to date with their vaccinations, and you
Hmm.
don't need to book anything there. And medical concerns, like if your pet has seasonal allergies, you might want to talk to your veterinarian before that season sort of really hits. But vacation planning is definitely another thing. Um, so, if you're going to go away this summer, who's going to look after your pets? And maybe you're planning on taking your pet with you. So, a bunch of stuff to think about here. Make sure the place where you're going allows pets because not everybody does. Um, there might also be requirements for vaccinations and parasite treatments if you're traveling to another country with your pet. And, I've said this before and I'll say it again. The rules are different for different places in the world. So you really need to make sure you check what your pet will need well ahead of time. And for some places with really strict requirements, you might even need to start the process 6 months or more ahead of time. So you really do have to get on that, pay attention to it. And, politics aside, even if you're planning on crossing into the United States, be sure you check what's required well before you go. We all remember that whole incident with the rules for crossing the border with pets changing last year. And, we don't really know what will happen with that next. So, before you go, in case they change anything, you should go onto the Canadian Food Inspection Agency website to see what the current requirements are for going to the US with your pets.
Mm.
Um, Another thing would just be to talk to your vet about where you're going. There may be different disease and parasite risks for your pet if you take them with you on vacation. So you really want to make sure they don't pick up anything while they're away. And the last thing to think about is to start preparing your pets for the trip. If you're expecting a long drive and your pet never goes in the car, it's a good
Mhm.
idea to get them used to it now. And the same for airplanes. If you're taking your pet on a plane, they should be used to and comfortable in a crate. Um, and of course, you can ask your vet if sedation is appropriate for them. But, the oral sedation, it isn't really guaranteed to work for every pet. So, you want to make sure that you do your best for yourself, your pet, and the other passengers on the plane to make sure the trip is as smooth and as noise free as possible. So, kind of, checking all that out ahead of time, what can I do? How can I get my pet ready? How are they going to react to the sedation? So these are all things you can talk to your vet about.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Danielle.
You're welcome.
That was our vet, Dr. Danielle Jongkind, giving us some tips and tricks for getting ourselves and our pets ready for the summer.
You ever travel with a pet?
No, but like I said, it looks exhausting.
Yeah, I mean,
But how
some
do you
people have
know
it
the
down to a
person
science,
next to
though.
you? Yeah, how do you know the person next to you on the plane won't be aggravated from your pet or anything like that? Like, I mean,
Well,
that's
I
tough.
think primarily now it's the service animals that they're really trying to get a focus on because of some people having the different claims of what's a service animal, what isn't, and just getting a handle on that because of that. I mean, different things are classed as a service animal, and people have allergies. People have scent sensitivities, or just, hey, I'm fearful of that. We're a very multicultural world, and, a lot of people, certain animals, no, I don't go near that, or no, we don't. And you want to be respectful, but so many of us need our service animal, and you want to be respectful of that. So that, I think, is a real touch point. I mean, a pet that you can put in the crate and put down where it's safe, great. You got your things to do to get the pet used to. I think we've always had a decent handle on that. You always worry. You're a pet owner, man. If I'm putting my dog down below, I'm like, yeah, was he all right though? Anyone aggravating him? You are taking care of him, right? You're going to be filled with those things, those questions. But I think some of that is its own conversation. But even in a vehicle, you worry enough about, is the car ride going to make the young kids sick? Is it going to make your pet sick too? I couldn't imagine. And I don't have that information. The last pet I had, I was like 6 years old, and we certainly weren't taking her anywhere and stuff like that. So I always wonder, like you said, oh man, it looks like a lot of work.
I think as Danielle mentioned as well, you just kind of train them to getting used to that type of environment before you get them on a plane or before you get them in a vehicle. There's certain ways to train them and get them into that routine so that they're prepared. They're ready. Oh,
great, Nazreen.
You know their reaction.
Nazreen put the cat or dog in a crate. Nazreen's reasons, well, I've got to take a trip to the Bahama to get my cat ready for when we take her on a trip across the world and stuff like that. I'll be back in a week or two. The justification, right? That's a pretty expensive justification. Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking for members of the disability community to join our AMI research panel. Our research panel guides us with every decision that we make at AMI, including programming, media consumption, and, of course, accessibility. Participants are compensated for all long-form studies. For more information, or simply how to join, go to ami.ca/panel. Let them know you're interested and glad to have you with us. Follow us, our show, on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly & Co. AMI. That's on Instagram and Twitter. Same handle, at Kelly & Co. AMI. Lots of great content put out there. Lots of different things to start conversation. And we want you a part of it. So please, at Kelly & Co. AMI. This may be a bit of an awkward conversation for most of us, but it should be very top of mind. Nutritionist Julia Karantjas is here to talk about colon health with us. Julia, welcome back, and I think we got to start the conversation with the bold question: how often should we be eliminating?
Yes, colon health is important. So there are a lot of different opinions on how often we should be eliminating. If you are chatting with somebody in the holistic nutrition world, we would love if people were eliminating at least once a day, but technically constipation would be less than 3 times a week. So if you're going to the washroom less than 3 times a week, you should be checking in with your doctor. That's something you want to chat with them about. And also, there shouldn't be discomfort. So if it's infrequent or uncomfortable, you want to address that. You want to be mindful of that. So those are falling under the umbrellas of constipation.
Okay. And when we look at that, I mean, obviously, it's definitely something to take up with the doctor because there could be blockage or something like that. But if we say, I don't feel I'm eliminating enough, what foods should we look to? Or should we start with that, or simply drink our water?
Yes, drink water, absolutely. And take it back to food. So we want to focus on foods that have both soluble and insoluble fiber, as well as pectin, which I think some people are familiar with apples. We hear apple pectin and the word pectin associated with apples. So pectin is a type of fiber, and it's very good at relieving constipation. Pectin's found in apples, as well as like bananas, a couple of other fruits and vegetables, more fruit. That's something that's very beneficial. But your soluble and insoluble fibers. So your insoluble fiber comes from seeds, comes from whole grains, leafy greens like kale, for example. This fiber doesn't digest, and it acts kind of like a scrub brush. So kind of pulls waste from the sides of the colon and, pushes it down. And then you've got soluble fiber from carrots, from apples, from berries, all your other fruits and vegetables, and psyllium, psyllium husk. You can, you drink it, and that's soluble and insoluble fiber. And that adds bulk to the stool, which is helpful at eliminating constipation. And then water plays a very important role, because now you've added bulk to the stool, and you want to make sure that you can, I'm going to say the word lubricate, lubricate it as it exits the body, because you don't want there to be discomfort. So that's, I hope that sounds simple, eat fruits and vegetables and drink water. And that is actually really important because of these types of fibers that you're getting in the whole grains and the other fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. A lot of people, to me, get talking about fiber, and I need to take in more fiber, especially, whether you do have an issue with eliminating, or you're diabetic, let's say, or something that may affect movement within your body. Yes. So they start piling on lots of fiber. Their food, half of their diet becomes fiber because of the fear, because we don't want to mess around with it. But then you talk about something that has both, that maybe, hey, you need that an apple a day. Maybe you need to take that, beverage and something that really helps works your system, and drink water. Do you find when people come talk to you, it's one of the hardest things for them to get a handle on if this is, I don't want to say a problem, but just trying to balance out their diet so that this is part of the positive things that some people will say, oh, drink lots of tea and toast. Well, hold on, what's that mean, and for who?
Tea and
right.
toast.
Yeah. Yes. I do find it's a problem because there's, people get very busy, and the foods that you grab when you're really busy do tend to be low in fiber. The more processed the food, the less likely it is to have a decent fiber content. So you've got, muffins, breads, toast made of refined flour, and the bran, often is stripped away from it, which is a very important nutritional component. And the fiber is less because you're not eating a whole grain, you're eating this processed grain. And now you need to add more food. And when people are busy, taking the time to not only grocery shop for that food, but also the time to eat it in the day can be an obstacle.
Right.
Yeah. So it can be a challenge. Some people think, oh, it might be fun to be told to eat more food, but a lot of us, it's almost an annoyance because you've got to carve out time in your day.
And which food? Which food has the biggest bang? Because you can't just sit there. Well, I'll just eat lots of the things I hear are good. You do have to pick and choose, and everybody's body is so different.
Oh, yes. Exactly. Everybody's body is super different. That's for sure. But a focus on whole food is never a bad thing. But there needs to be those whole grains, brown rice, for example, oats, if you like them, and then the fruit and vegetable side. And there is nothing wrong with, taking psyllium. Doctors prescribe Metamucil for a valid reason. Right. That's what psyllium is. So if that's what you have time for, and that's what's going to allow a comfortable bowel movement, that's great. Because the colon is where your body eliminates waste meaning your body doesn't need it, it doesn't want it, and there's toxins in that. So you don't want that sitting in your body longer than it needs to, longer than it should. That's uncomfortable. That's going to make you tired. That's going to lead to problems down the road. Like you mentioned, blockages, Kelly. So it's important that your body rids itself of those, the things that it doesn't need, and to do so comfortably.
Does things like Metamucil, I think, years ago, the commercials would always take Metamucil, and you'd have these commercials pushing and prompting. And a lot of time we get the idea, oh, that's for older people. And obviously we know
Yeah.
it's not. We all need to. We've all heard that even as children, with, mom or dad saying, have you had a bowel movement yet? Whatever it might be, because
Yeah.
you're young and whatever. No, I've been running around playing. I ain't got time for that. When we look at the fact that medications are probably also what we think as we get older and synonymous with being
Yeah.
older, they also can have that impact. And nowadays we've got different things for diabetics, Ozempic, and so on. And some of the behaviors there may counteract your regularity. I don't want to say there's Metamucil and taking a celium. That's all for the older people, because obviously it's not. But I think a lot of us have to kind of swallow our pride and recognize that too, that what you might be taking outside of what you're eating may be creating difficulty.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I mean, it can be a side effect, that things slow down internally. And Metamucil it's a fiber supplement, and fiber isn't just for older people. So that, that's an important thing to think about. If you're not eliminating comfortably and frequently enough, so definitely you need to be at least 3 times a week. But if you're experiencing bloating and gas and burping, that might be a sign that you should address your digestive system as well. A fiber supplement is great. It doesn't necessarily have to be Metamucil. It's just obviously very common. And we know that it's psyllium, which is that soluble and insoluble fiber. You can also get unflavored Metamucil. In my opinion, it does taste terrible, but maybe you add it to something. Maybe you're adding it to your cereal or a smoothie or your oatmeal. And so it might not be so bad when you mix it with those sorts of things. But there is absolutely nothing wrong. Everybody needs fiber. And whether you're eating it or drinking it as a supplement, everybody needs it. So it's important. And there's nothing wrong with taking a supplement if that's what's convenient for your body.
Is there too much? Like if someone is adding psyllium to their cereal, how do we judge that? And one hit of it a day, or if someone says, but I want my banana and I want my apple.
Yeah. You can get too much fiber. I mean, the recommended daily intake is around 35 grams. It can vary slightly depending, obviously for a child, it's completely different, and age might be a factor. But that's roughly, generally speaking, what we need. Through different diet analyses, we see most people get around 12. So adding one supplement a day of fiber probably isn't going to be too much, but it is definitely possible. If you have a high fiber diet and then you add a supplement, maybe you are getting too much. But you would know, because you would probably not be able to poop, or you would be going too much. And then you would want to reel that back. And there's lots of apps that you can plug in your daily food intake into, and it will tell you your fiber content, which can be really interesting. Or you can obviously, you could go see somebody and they can calculate it for you as well, which sometimes is kind of fascinating. But sure, you can do too much. But if it's uncomfortable or if it's infrequent, I think that's a really good telltale sign that you're on the opposite end of too much. You're not enough.
Okay. Well, that's kind of what, I think people get panicked, especially when we talk about, I'm going to start a diet, so I need to add more fibers so I can eliminate. I've got a health concern and I want to have the right foods. I want to do the right. So it is really hard, because I mean, I hear people talk about, I'm eating more fiber, and they start listing the things off. And like I said, it almost becomes 40% of their diet.
Yeah. I mean, we should be having either fruit and or vegetable at every meal, but also there's the whole grains like brown rice, for example. And so just doing a quick mental check that, are you eating a meal that has some fiber in it? Or are you just having a bowl of cereal that's, like a fun cereal, for example, that really doesn't? Maybe have some grapes or some blueberries on the side, or mix it into the bowl, so that you're getting something.
Because somebody says something to you, it starts making you think, oh man, you're having this, and this. Should I be having this, and this? And meanwhile, you're already having, Raisin Bran, apple, and so on, and some of these other, perfectly good things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to always do is check in with yourself, and if because you might be doing really well in terms of your fiber intake, and then somebody says something to you and you think, oh, maybe I need more, but then if you actually
Hmm.
take a look at yourself, you're doing great. So are you going to the bathroom? Do you feel like you've eliminated, like, do you have these feelings of bloat? Are you super tired? Are you gassy? Are you bloated? And is it uncomfortable to pass a bowel movement? And if you're none of those things, that's a great sign you're doing well, right? You don't have any of those symptoms. So I think it's just for those people that are really experiencing those infrequent or uncomfortable bowel movements where that's when you would want to take a look. And increasing food is a good idea. I mean, carrots, apples,
Right. Yeah.
figs, blueberries, avocado. You always start with food, and then if you don't have the time, then you can take a dip into the supplement.
Some assist. Do you get with people on these medications? Have you had a lot of people as a nutritionist stopping in to say, listen, I just started on, or I've been on so-and-so for 6 months and I'm feeling always bloated. Is that becoming more common?
I don't hear bloated, but I do hear like constipated, like the bowels have slowed down. Yeah. That's what I have been hearing more often is that, the medication has slowed down the bowel movement. We've talked a lot on this segment about magnesium, and that is something that I would always bring up. I mean, it's actually a muscle relaxant. And so it'll just relax those muscles of the colon, which can help just have a much more comfortable bowel movement. And you can find magnesium powder where you mix it with warm water. You drink it like a tea, and then you get nice, you get water, which is also beneficial. And that's very gentle. If you are taking a medication, I always recommend you check with your doctor or pharmacist before doing any supplementation. But it definitely is a side effect that is, that we see, that we hear
and
about.
if you're taking a medication, again, depending on how long you're taking it, and it has the potential to create issues that way, again, I guess we go back to how long are you on this? What kind of issue is it going to create? And I guess go from there with, if you speak to your pharmacist or your doctor, or have that need, Julia.
Yeah, exactly. Take it day by day, assess week by week. And if that's a side effect that you are indeed experiencing, go see if you can use a supplement, because sometimes you can't with the medication. You want to be careful with what you're taking and make sure that the medication is still being, efficient in your body. But just know that that if this is something that's a potential, that you might want to consider increasing your soluble and insoluble fiber. And maybe that means just with food at first, if you have the time to eat, which, we hope that we can make that time.
Yeah. And before I let you go, is there a particular time of the day that you figure, I mean, I think a lot of us think, oh, I'll do this all in the morning. It's that kind of thing as well, spread out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't recommend taking fiber in the evening. If I put it in any of my clients' protocols, it's always in the morning, because nobody wants to be awoken in the middle of the night by having to go to the bathroom. That's not convenient. And we don't want to be disturbing anyone's sleep. That's the opposite direction of where we want to be headed. So with fiber, the morning hours are more ideal, because then you might have the bowel movement then before you go to sleep, which is what you would want. But again, everybody's body is different, and there's nothing wrong with experimenting, with taking it at different times of the day. But morning hours are my default, because of you don't want to be going to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Well, what an important conversation, Julie. I know awkward, as we said off the top, for people, just because, but unfortunately, sometimes we make things more dangerous because we can't have that talk and open it up and just say, listen, guys, are we okay if your doctor's sitting there telling you, your nutritionist, if you stop in and you're, hey, I'm having this problem, but I think some of us would prefer hearing somebody talk about it instead of me having to go and, by the way, doc, hey, when you can try so many different little things to start with.
Yeah. I mean, they do stool samples, right? The medical world does stool samples. So our poo is important. Yeah. It's a very important part of our health, the way that our colon works.
Fantastic. Julia, thank you. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks.
Julia Karantjas, our nutritionist today. We were talking about colon health. If you missed any of that conversation, definitely go back, check it out via the podcast, or subscribe to our YouTube page, venture out there, and it'll be posted later on. It's definitely really important conversation, and of course, awkward as we mentioned. Nisreen Abdul-Majid, Kelly MacDonald, host of the show. And Nisreen, before we move on and bring Mark Rankin in, you've got something to talk about regarding Braille.
200 years have passed since the invention of Braille, the tactile writing system that has transformed the lives of many blind and partially sighted people by offering a path to literacy and independence. So for Amado NDA, he said, Braille helped me live my life. He's a social worker in Mali who lost his eyesight as a child. And he said, before people ask themselves the question, here's someone who can't see, how will he make it? How will he integrate into society? The West African country, with a population of over 20 million people, has long struggled to integrate blind and partially sighted people. But according to eye care charity Sight Savers, around 170,000 people in Mali are thought to be blind. The 47-year-old NDA was fortunate to attend the Institute for the Blind in Mali, where he learned to write in Braille and told himself, really everything that others do, I can do too. So he said Braille has allowed him to develop his main passion, playing the guitar, which also emphasizes the importance of touch. So for Kelly, for many, it's what people can see. That's how they feel connected to the world. That's how you feel that you fit in. But for people who are blind or partially sighted, it's all about touch. So isn't that crazy? 200 years has passed.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, first of all, 200. When we have Braille Day on January 4th, I know there was a lot of recognition of the 200 years, and Fedora's off to one of the things that have helped many of us get through. And I remember that, just being able to have access to things. Otherwise, this is before the internet, and just as talking screen readers and that were taking over or starting to get big, I remember having to just read stuff or listen to audiobooks. But that ability to read up and find something, and today even more so if you're a Braille user and that's your preferred way of finding out what's out there, what people are saying, what people are writing, to be able to put things now easier, much easier into an accessible format. Just tremendous. So I understand what he's saying. And I think, Nisreen, one of the difficulties that I would say I have always learned and tried to ask the question, Kelly, because this isn't germane to your life in the sense of what you know day to day, can you put yourself in that person's shoes from their country, from their place in the world? And I may not be able to. It's a matter of listening to find out more about what they're saying, what they're telling me, and their experience, and understanding, yeah, Kel, your experience day to day, your reading Braille is going to differ from someone else's. It's not just reading the words or it's maybe even having access. Maybe that person doesn't get to travel. Everything they know about is read at the tips of their fingers. And exactly. I think so important, and this is really nice to hear.
And we feel so grateful to be in a country where it's very accessible all around us. I mean, compared to other countries, they're not wheelchair friendly. They're not accessible at all. And I'm talking about, we feel so privileged. But with the development of new technologies, some blind and partially sighted people who have hope that educational barriers, will continue to fall. So hopefully that will change the world.
Well, and some feel Braille is of the past, 200 years old. Oh, that's an ancient way, like carrying a white cane around. That's the old way of travel. Still done. You haven't really improved on the white cane. It is what it is. We have certain techniques and things that are coming out, such as guidance, that some may say, well, that's kind of an improvement. It's a different thing. Right? It's a different use. And that's the same with Braille. You have different mediums in which to enjoy Braille, to make it convenient because it's the way you're comfortable reading. Some of us learn better by listening. Some of us read better. And it's wonderful to be able to read with the tips of your fingers and be able to get around, whether it's with your ancient old cane or reading Braille, settled back and enjoying yourself once you get to that place where you can open your book, set your ancient old coffee down that's been around for hundreds of years, and enjoy that and your 200-year-old Braille. Remember to check out our podcast, folks, from your platform of choice, and give us a rating and review if you don't mind. Also, again, the YouTube page. Subscribe when you get some time. In modern cities, can you make sense of the street corners as a blind or low vision person by simply just listening? Or are GPSs and other mapping tools absolutely necessary from where you're coming from when it comes to accessible travel? Let's talk about the safety of it all with orientation and mobility specialist Mark Rankin, who joins us. Mark, who inspired or what inspired this chat?
Yeah, I was just thinking recently about a client I worked with early on in my career, and he'd come from the States. He was a young guy, like in his teens, and he started doing orientation mobility training with me. And he said he didn't really have much training before, but he was pretty independent. Like he did quite well, and I was pretty confident that I could start working on more advanced travel with him and do some street crossings and things. And usually with someone that age, who's congenitally blind in his case, that means a lot of prep work on sort of what traffic does, because they have, no reference, not being a driver themselves. They have passengers in cars, but certainly can't be aware of the full context of what happens when a car is traveling. And so that usually is a lot of work, just on concept stuff. But we went to the nearest intersection. It was just a regular four-way intersection with traffic lights, and he was like dead on. He was like, "Oh, I'm waiting to hear the traffic beside me start moving. I know that's the green light, and I hear that traffic stop, so I'll listen for the traffic that's like perpendicular to me. And when it starts moving, I know that there's a green that way going westbound." And I was quite amazed. I said, like, how who worked on you with this? And he said, "Oh, my grandfather did. When I was young, he used to take me down to the street corner and he'd have me listen to the traffic and explain what was going on." And I mean, it worked great for him. He was like so further ahead than most people would be at his age.
Yeah. It's interesting too, Mark, when we look at somebody in that position, and the reason it was successful is because no one said to the grandfather, "Oh, no, you can't do that. He's got to go to a CNIB. Oh, no, you can't learn that way. That's not possible." How do you learn just by teaching yourself? And yet there are so many examples of people teaching themselves, picking up something until we interfere with them. I mean, when I did blind curling, the best I was when nobody actually taught me how to throw. I just did it by my instinct, and I was better than. But then you start getting in your own head, and that's not for everybody. You definitely need different things to help out and support, as he knew by coming to you.
Yeah, well, thinking back on this recently, I was working an intersection with somebody, and I recommended he just always use the APS when he was crossing there. And I thought, wow, there's less and less situations where I feel that I'm confident telling someone that they can cross just by analyzing the traffic at that intersection. A part of it's just the way that intersections have sort of developed, over my career as an orientation mobility specialist. And mostly they've developed in ways that promote a faster flow of traffic, right? So they're more efficient for cars. And then to compensate for that, there's things that you can use as a pedestrian, but it means a lot of intersections, they have particular control. So you have sort of semi-actuated intersections, which would be ones where there's a dominant street where there's a lot of traffic, and then there's a quieter intersecting street. And that quiet intersecting street sometimes will respond to waiting vehicles. So there's a sensor, or there's cameras, there's different ways of doing it. But if it senses that there's a car waiting to turn onto that busy street, it will then create a signal. But the signal it'll create will be only a traffic signal. So the traffic light will go on, but a walk signal won't go out. Now, if somebody presses the button to indicate that they want to cross, then they'll get a walk signal and potentially a longer cycle to allow them to cross. Now, how would you figure that out? By listening to it. You may go out and not have any traffic waiting to turn or anyone going to turn, and might think that there's no light there. You might go at another time and hear a short cycle because you didn't press the button, but it responded to the car that was waiting to turn. And you might think that's too slow, too short a cycle to cross. Later, if someone had pressed the button across the street, you'd hear a longer cycle and think, "Oh, I could cross here." So really, really confusing in that the intersection will sound like a totally different control is present depending on who's using it at that time. And then fully actuated ones, you'll have even longer. They'll every corner will react to traffic. So you might get a very long advanced signal for turning traffic, and you might get a dedicated right turn signal um, during rush hour. But midday, if there's no cars waiting to turn in the left turn lane, then you get a regular surge. So really confusing to just go out there, listen, and interpret what's going on when what you're listening to is continually changing.
I think that's one of the things that people struggle with relying on technology rather than understanding yourself, what is happening at an intersection.
Yeah, I guess my concern is you have to actually really educate yourself about what's going on now. Like, why is it different? Why am I hearing different things at different times of the day? What's going on there? And either you can talk to an orientation mobility specialist about that, or you can go to the City of Toronto and find out what kind of traffic controls they have, what kind of intersections they have. But it's different. It's not like simple where there used to be pretty straightforward controls for signals, and you could listen to them, and you could be pretty sure if you listened to it in the morning, it would sound the same in the afternoon, and it would sound the same at night, because it was just a regular time signal.
Now, people would argue, Mark, that in different points in the world, you go to London, England back in the 1940s or whenever, because of the structure, the age of the place, things were different, the tightness. I know it depends where you're from. It depends on your experience. I mean, it's awful. I remember so many times trying to figure out an intersection and having the standard for maybe 3-4 light cycles, which sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, and people will sometimes people will come up with their own solutions. We could cross somewhere else, right? I mean, I remember talking to a blind fellow who was here from, he actually was from the States originally, but he lived in Florence for a long time because his fiance was Italian. And I said, "Oh, how's that? Where you're in an area where it's like so many tourists and a lot of people don't know they." And he said, "Oh yeah, the first thing the orientation mobility specialist told me when I worked with there was don't ever try and cross an intersection because you'll get hit. Just cross in the middle of the block," which was to me like horrifying. Wow. But based on a very different, very different context, and somebody who has the knowledge necessary to do that. Now, I can't ever imagine saying that to someone here. I mean, there are certain techniques we'll teach people, but it takes a lot of work listening to traffic to tell how long it takes between when you first hear traffic on your perpendicular street to when it's in front of you, and you compare that with how long it takes you to cross the street, and that's a method you can use to determine whether uncontrolled crossings would be all right for somebody. Now in Toronto, I've never used this, but in more rural areas they will. So again, because in more rural areas there may not be a signal for 6 kilometers, so you're going to have to figure out if you're going to cross the street, you're going to have to figure out a way to do it. So there's a lot of techniques you can do, but you've got to make sure that you've really done the work and the preparation and determining what the risks are at the particular intersection. I would probably say that's really what you want to make sure people understand is where the risks are in any crossing. So even if you're using an APS, and that's going to tell you when the walk signal is up, you still really should be aware of where the threats are when you're crossing the street.
Yeah.
So initially it may be the right turn traffic, it's going to be the traffic coming from the left initially as you step out. Later it'll probably be the left turn traffic. And then in the second part of that crossing, it's going to be again probably right turn traffic as you come across, so coming from your right. And the reason that's important is because then you can respond to appropriately to what you're encountering when you're crossing. So I find, some people who are APS dependent, they'll start a crossing and a car may turn left in front of them, but they'll come across our path perpendicularly, and they get very startled and where did that car come from? It must have run a red light. What's going on? Like, this doesn't make sense. And I'll say, well, it was left turn. It was, say, we're crossing northbound. It was coming southbound, and then it went eastbound. And
yeah,
if
really
had
makes
they
people stop and
understood,
think. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, had they been aware
Yeah.
of that as they're crossing, they would have sort of interpreted, okay, first I'm listening for traffic there, then I'm listening for traffic there. You won't be as anxious, you won't be as startled if something does happen, and you'll also put yourself in a situation where you can potentially respond to it. You hear a surge, and you think, oh, I better make sure that there's not someone making that left turn real late, and I'll just slow down for a second here and see what's gonna happen. So it puts you more in control of your safety when you're in that crossing. You may be using the APS to indicate to you that the walk signal's on, but as we all know, the presence of a walk signal doesn't guarantee safety. You still are responsible for yourself ultimately,
Yep.
right?
Same with your GPS or whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
and the crossings are just getting more
Oh,
difficult too,
God,
so.
especially talk circles. Hey, Mark, look at it this way. As you were saying about Florence, Italy, if you were working in Venice, you'd have to tell people, well, for your crossings, be a strong swimmer. Thanks, pal.
Exactly.
Thanks, Mark.
Have a good
Thank you, Mark.
We'll
All right.
talk to you next
Talking.
month.
Take care, Nazreen. Bye, Kelly.
Mark Rankin joining us on the program. Thanks to his time with us and all of our guests on the program. On our next edition, when Nazreen and I join you again, technology has evolved in ways that shape our reality. But what if there's other realities, alternate versions of ourselves, living different lives based on the choices we make? Marco Pasqua explores the journey of assistive technology, how innovation creates new possibilities for us all, and reminding us that there somewhere out there might be another version of somebody like you living out other decisions. We'll talk about it on the program tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, and Fedora's off to you.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.